All right, so welcome back. Judiciary, energy, defense, health, climate, and economy. Let's go. So, today, the SC Handbook on Gender Stereotypes. The Supreme Court's Handbook on Combating Gender Stereotypes, released by Chief Justice Chandrachud in 2023, is back in focus. A March 2026 SC bench invoked the handbook to flag stereotypical reasoning in a lower court judgment, confirming its operational status in actual proceedings. Now, the handbook identifies harmful terms used in Indian courts and provides rights respecting alternatives. Example, eve teasing becomes street sexual harassment. The change is not cosmetic, it determines how seriously the offense is treated in sentencing. This is handbook's most cited example. The term trivializes a cognizable criminal offense. Now, the handbook is grounded in fundamental rights, not just ethics. When a judge discounts a survivor's testimony based on her character, it violates Article 14, equal protection, and Article 21, dignity simultaneously. So, gender stereotypes is the generalized assumption about women's behavior embedded in judicial reasoning. SC Handbook is the 2023 document by CJI Chandrachud, replaces discriminatory language, discriminatory court language. Eve teasing is replaced term. Correct term is street sexual harassment. CEDAW is the UN Convention on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. And Article 21 is the right to life and personal dignity, violated by stereotypical judicial language. And the advisory versus binding is the handbook has no enforcement mechanism. Judges cannot be penalized for ignoring it. Then we have the Strait of Hormuz, India's energy choke point. The US Iran tensions are escalating in 2026, with Iran warning of potential disruptions to the Strait of Hormuz. This directly threatens India's energy supply and has reviewed the debate about whether India's strategic petroleum reserve is anywhere near adequate. Now, India's imports 85% of its crude oil needs, and roughly 80% of those shipments pass through the 21-mile Strait of Hormuz. Now, India's strategic petroleum reserve, managed by ISPRL across three underground sites at Visakhapatnam, Mangaluru, and Padur, covers only about 9.5 days of consumption. If every time Hormuz is threatened, India's import bill spikes. Strait of Hormuz is the 21-mile checkpoint between Iran and Oman. 20% of the global oil trade passes through it. SPR is the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, state-owned crude stockpile for supply disruption emergencies. Then we have the ISPRL, which is the Indian Strategic Petroleum Reserves Limited, manages India's three SPR sites, and petrodollar is the system where all global oil is priced and settled in US dollars since 1974. West Asia policy is India's balanced diplomacy with Iran, Saudi Arabia, UAE, shaped by energy and trust. Next, we have the India's multi-domain deterrence. India's defense doctrine is shifting towards multi-domain deterrence, integrating conventional forces with space, cyber, and electronic warfare. March 2026 reports cover progress on theater commands reform and India's growing recognition that modern wars are decided across all domains simultaneously. Now, multi-domain operations means all five domains are active simultaneously. If China jams India's military satellites, and disrupts communications, conventional border defense becomes blind. Now, Galwan 2020 exposed India's surveillance gap. China had better high altitude sensors and situational awareness. Russia Ukraine confirmed that drone warfare, electronic warfare, and satellite targeting are decisive. Country India Currently, India has 17 separate single service commands. Army, Navy, Air Force operate independently. Theater commands would put all three services under one joint commander per geographic zone, enabling coordinated multi domain operations. MDO is the multi domain operations military doctrine combining land, sea, air, space, and cyber simultaneously. Integrated theater commands are the proposed joint commands replacing India's 17 single service commands. CDS is the Chief of Defence Staff, coordinates joint operations, post created 2019. Um, PLASSF, which is China's Strategic Support Force, integrates space, cyber, electronic warfare since 2015. Defense Cyber Agency is the India's military cyber command established since 2019, and NAVIC is India's 7 satellite navigation constellation, provides less than 5-meter military accuracy. Then we have the GLP-1 drugs, the Ozempic debate. So the GLP-1 receptor agonist, the class of drugs that includes Ozempic and Wegovy, are generating a policy debate in India. The CDSCO has approved semaglutide for diabetes, but the obesity indication is on a separate track, and most Indian patients face a cost barrier of about 10,000 to 30,000 per month. Now, GLP-1 drugs mimics a gut hormone that suppresses hunger, not through stimulants, but by reducing the neurological drive to eat. India has over 100 million people with obesity and 250 million overweight, but at current prices, GLP-1 drugs are accessible only to the wealthy. The ethical question: obesity is driven by food environment, stress, sedentary work, and food insecurity. Treating it pharmaceutically addresses the symptom, not the cause, and creates a potential lifetime drug dependency, since weight typically returns when patients stop. Now, GLP-1 receptor agonist is the drug class mimicking gut hormone, suppresses hunger, reduces blood sugar. Semaglutide is the active ingredient in Ozempic, diabetes, and Wegovy, which is obesity. CDSCO is the Central Drug Standard Control Organization, India's drug regulator. Biosimilar is the near identical copy of a biological drug, could make semaglutide affordable in India. Thin fat phenotype is the Indians have higher metabolic risk at lower BMI than Western populations. Now, select trial is 2023 trial showing semaglutide reduces cardiovascular deaths in non-diabetic obese patients. Then we have the uh, India's 2035 climate target (NDC) update. India is preparing or has submitted its updated nationally determined contribution for 2035 under the Paris Agreement. This is the next 5-year cycle of climate commitments, and the debate centers on whether India will move towards absolute emissions cuts or stay with intensity based targets. Now, India's NDC commits are reducing. India's NDC commits to reducing emissions intensity of GDP, CO2 per unit of economic output, not total emissions. This means India's absolute emissions will keep rising as the economy grows, but each rupee of GDP produces less carbon. So it's legitimate developmental equity choice, but one that contributes to global temperature overshoot. So India's 5 Glasgow commitments include 500 gigawatt non-fossil capacity, 50% renewable energy share, and net zero by 2070, the latest net zero target among the major economies. At COP29 in Baku, developed nations agreed to $300 billion per year by 2035 for developing nations. Climate transition. India called it woefully insufficient. NDC is a nationally determined contribution. Each country's self-set climate target under Paris Agreement. Emissions intensity is the CO2 emitted per unit of GDP. CBDRRC is the common but differentiated responsibilities. Panchamrit is the India's 5 climate commitments announced at COP26 Glasgow in 2021. Then NCQG is the new collective quantified goal. COP29 climate finance commitment, $300 billion per year by 2035. And net zero 2070 is India's target to balance all greenhouse gas emissions with removals by 2070. Then we have the local currency trade in oil de-dollarization. So India's shift towards local currency payments for oil, paying Russia in rupees, routing some payments through UAE dirhams, continues to evolve in 2026. The story is about more than just India Russia trade. It's about whether the dollar's stranglehold on global oil payments is weakening and what India's role is in that shift. Now, in 2022, the West froze $300 billion in Russian reserves, and removed Russia from SWIFT, demonstrating that dollar denominated reserves and SWIFT access can be revoked geopolitically. Now, India paid Russia in rupees through special rupee wash through accounts. But Russia accumulated over 35,000 crore it could not easily spend because rupees are not globally convertible. Russia shifted preference to UAE dirhams, exposing the fundamental limit of rupee trade settlement. India's rupee cannot be freely traded internationally because the capital account is not fully convertible. RBI controls cross border capital flows. Until the rupee is internationally usable, it cannot become a serious oil settlement currency, regardless of how many bilateral watchdog frameworks India signs. Petrodollar system is the 1974 US Saudi agreement pricing all oil in dollars, gives dollar permanent global demand. SWIFT is the global interbank messaging network, removing a country from its causes financial isolation. Watchdog account is the account held by a foreign bank in an Indian bank in rupees, enables rupee trade settlement. CIPS is the China's cross-border interbank payment system, handles yuan international payments. De-dollarization is the structural shift away from the dollar in global trade and reserve holdings. Then capital account convertibility is a freedom to convert domestic currency to foreign assets. India has partial convertibility only. Now, six topics: judiciary, energy, defense, health, climate, and economy. Stay consistent, stay sharp. See you tomorrow.